Hey everyone, I'm Joanna Lord. I'm the Director of Acquisition over here at SEO Moz. Welcome to another Whiteboard Friday. I'm going to be stepping in for Rand today, so no, I'm not Rand in case you're wondering. But I'm going to be talking about something pretty exciting that I love talking about, so hopefully this goes well. It's on-page optimization. We're going to be talking about a lot of the stuff that we do here for landing pages, and I'm going to take a little spin on it. So I know there are a lot of articles out there that help you with the basics of landing page optimization, but I think that that's really well documented, and we're going to kind of skip through that really fast. And instead, we're going to talk about some of the more advanced things that we're doing, some kind of philosophical changes that we're trying to use to steer our tests. So traditionally, I put up here the kind of things that you would think about before. So you're looking at your pages and you're like, we really need to increase conversions, or we need to do better. What can we look at? So the first thing, obviously, is being specific, making sure that those landing pages really match up to what people are searching for. And we can do this through headlines, we can do this through the images we put on the page, or the paragraph text that you put on there. And then you look and you want it to be clean and you want it to be concise. And this one is really fun for designers, right? We want to make it visually appealing, and you want to make sure that what people are looking for is kind of well spread out on the page. It's got a lot of white space around it. It's got some bullets. It's really easy to find. The third one's around the call to action, and I think that we're all pretty well versed in this. We want it to be big, we want it to be bold, we want it to be contrasting so that when people find the page, they know what we're expecting them to do. And the last one, surprisingly, a lot of people still kind of maybe mess around with, or they haven't done enough for, and that's this concept that the page really needs to be branded and it needs to be trusted. And when someone shows up, it needs to be really obvious that you're the authority, you're the one they should go with, you can give them your money. It's all sorts of things around the idea of trust. And for a long time, I think if you nailed those four things, you were doing really good. You were safe, you could make some money, you would have another day in your world. But I think that things have changed and users have evolved, and that's kind of what we're talking about today. So I actually put up here a really beautiful, really sassy looking diagram on why I think that the user's expectations have changed and how we're going to solve for that. We'll get to in a little bit. So the number one thing is, I think, just like what I just said, this concept that the user has evolved. Before, a person didn't see as many sites in one day. They didn't see as many sites on one topic. So they didn't have an expectation before they came to you. You might have been the first site they found that was e-commerce on this type of brand, But now they're seeing so much more and it's saturated. So they have higher expectations before they even get to your site. And the second one is trust redefined, and this is a really big one. This one we can't understate. And that's that right now, because there are so many ways to show that you are an authority and to show that people like you, that people expect to see it on the page. And we'll talk about some of the exact signals, but for the most part, they're really expecting more from you. The social engagement and the UGC expected, when people show up to a site, they really want to see that there's a community going on, that there's a number of people talking about you, that you're, talking with them, and that there's a kind of a sense of happiness around whatever the brand is or whatever the product might be. So these two are already an expectation. It's not optional anymore, right? It doesn't separate you if you have it. You really need to have it. Design expectations have been raised, and I think that's, I know Rand wrote a blog post about this a while ago, so I'm not going to talk too much on it, but with sites like Dribbble coming out and just having so many great designers out there, the websites are beautiful, and yours has to be beautiful too. So people are going to bounce if they just don't feel that your site is visually up to their standards. Search equals discovery. I think before, if you answered their need, that was almost enough. But I don't think it's enough anymore. I think that they really want to discover more about who you are and what you do and why you're doing it. And then this idea of sentiment, which is just really this idea that when someone comes to you, they don't just need to feel that you can get them what they need. They don't just need to feel that you're there to answer their questions. They need to feel positive about you, and like you're someone they can connect with on multiple levels. And that's just because we spend so much more of our time online, that where we spend our time is really that much more important to us. So I think that's a lot of how things have changed, and that's why these don't exactly answer it anymore. So I'm going to talk about some things that I think we really need to be thinking about as website optimizers. The first, the basics. So you do need to have these. Some people are getting really excited about their landing pages right now, and they're going out there and they're building these beautiful HTML5 sites, but they don't have the basics, and people are bouncing because they don't feel comfortable. So you do need to have these. But then you need to move on to some of these. So let's jump into some of these and let's talk about what they are. the concept of rethinking conversions is interesting because I think as marketers, we say to ourselves, I need to track what's important to the bottom line. And we do, we absolutely do. You need to know your purchases, your conversions, your form fill outs. You need to know even how many emails you're getting if you're backing that out for lead gen. All of those are still very important. But there's a lot of other conversions you need to be testing for and keeping an eye on. Your social counts, that should absolutely be an optimizer's job to increase. Getting people to like you, getting people to follow you, those should be your job. Member counts, can you get them to sign up for a membership? Where you put it on the page and how it's shown is all part of our job. Downloads and engagements, those are also important to us. It's not just about leaving them with something anymore. It's about getting them to go deeper into the site. Demo counts, I put this in there a lot because I think people forget about this. If you go to SEO Mods right now, you'll see that we have our features there and we want you to take a free trial, but we also want you to explore the product. And we very much track how many people go into the features section of our site and how do they interact there and how do they engage. So that's a really important one. And then feedback. I know a lot of marketers that when they put up a survey on the site, if they use something like Kiss Insights, they get it up on the site and they say to themselves, well, we're not going to worry about conversions for the next 7 days because we're collecting feedback. But that's not really the case. That should be your conversion. You should be testing to see how you can get more feedback, how you can get more surveys completed. So all of this is about rethinking conversions, and you need to be testing for it as much as you would have tested for any of these more basic elements. On the second here, we have the brand strengthening, really important, and I think it's pretty fun stuff. Traditionally, as marketers, we might have thought to ourselves, there's a certain job for that, right, at the company. Whether it be the CMO or your Marcom manager, there's someone who's in charge of making sure that everyone sees us a certain way. I think that you can do this with your landing pages really effectively, and you can build a story over time. And that's what this column's all about. So, traditionally, when you think of brand, you think we need logos up there. We need some testimonials up there. We need to make them feel safe. But I think there's more you can do. Things like mission statements, where you put them. Do you just have a byline up? Is there more that you consistently use on every page in your site? Things like awards. Have you won awards? Do you bury them in a press section or do you move them up? Things like consistency, making sure that whatever you say about your product or your company on one page, you say across the whole site is really important. You don't change your key adjectives. You should be testing what adjectives really resonate with your audience. Badges are also really important. I know a lot of people that they just put up kind of their phone number in one place and they'll put their email in another, or they'll put their shipping policy over here. All of that should be compounded together into a badge. People want to see all of your trust signals in a very tight space because they're looking for all of them when they see one. So they'll just assume that you don't have a good shipping policy if they don't see it next to your phone number, that sort of thing. So you need to think about that, where you're putting it, the placement. And then positivity. I think a lot of people forget about this. They kind of put up words that they think are just kind of fun, maybe even a little bit snarky or comedic, but people don't know you. They don't know your culture. They don't know your brand. So when they read it, they really want to feel positivity. They want to see positive words, happiness. There's some really great e-commerce sites out there that do this really well. Things like Sephora, they do it excellently. So think about those things when you're looking at your sites. And then testing all truths. This is going to be the hardest one to push through. It's really, really challenging to walk into a room of people that have spent years on a website and say, everything that is the foundation of this site, let's go test it. But that's what you have to do, and that's what makes these really come to life. That's what makes these really big impacts across your entire site and your entire business goals. And that's around the concept of, traditionally, you might test a feature or you might test an element on a page. Instead, you're testing the whole kabang. You're saying, let's test the whole layout. Whereas before, maybe we were, one picture and then text down here, let's do it dual columns. And you're just changing up the entire visual aesthetic of your site. The sentiment. So however you're presenting yourself, if, for example, if you're an outdoor site and you're saying we're adventurous and we're bold and we're exciting, maybe you think completely about it and we're about peacefulness and tranquility in nature. And you need to completely change the way that you're presenting yourselves and see how your audience reacts. Things like features, a lot of companies know their key features really well and they always lead with them. Well, your audiences evolve and lots of the message needs to evolve with it. So what other features should maybe you lead with? What other features should you be testing as the true ringer, right? The one that gets their attention. Design's really important. We've talked about it a little bit, but you get caught up in a design as a company and you think to yourself, this is our vibe, like this is the way that we're going to step forward. But that really needs to be tested ongoing because what you assume might work is the baseline, but you have no idea where you're going to fall if you switch it up. And then navigation. A lot of people, they know when a navigation's working well and they're afraid to touch it. And I think that it's a real injustice to not try to revisit your navigation and say, maybe we should really swap this around a little bit. So these are all things that I think you really need to think about beyond these really common, basic landing page optimization tactics. And for the whole point of it is that you're really supposed to be able to look at it and say, I think we're making a difference. I think we're testing some really big philosophies around our site. And if you can just nail one of those, you're going to feel the impact across all your channels. I did leave you guys with a really quick action list here that we can hopefully touch on. And that's just rethinking your goals as a company often really helps you hit some of these bigger things out of the park. Because when you see that the goals change, and they always do from quarter to quarter, it can help you steer what you should be testing for. So that and connecting with other teams, I think, is really important. We do a lot of it here. We go into the help team, we ask them what is a trouble for them, and what they resonate to us is usually those bigger philosophical changes that we should address. And this last part is just get started. And I think it's because all of it's great in theory, as always, but if you don't actually go try to test it, or if you don't set up a new test, you're never going to know. So hopefully that's helped you out, and I'll see you next week for another Whiteboard Friday.